The incidence of gender-based violence is growing astronomical. The 16 days of activism against gender-based violence was a time to remember victims and survivors of gender-based violence and further reevaluate the effectiveness of interventions currently in place to address the problem. One of those interventions is the creation of NASFAT Child Protection and Gender-Based Violence Response Team, whose objectives is to lend a voice to the condemnation of the Erroneous Act and come up with strategies that will be instrumental to its reduction to the barest minimum. Such of those might be preventive measures, support mechanism, prosecution and disciplinary measures to get justice for survivors in line with the mission of the society, which is to promote welfare of mankind. Gender-based violence is hindering national productivity as it is occurring among people in the productive age group who are having to deal with the negative physical and psychological consequence of the vice. You will agree with me that there is a need to create more loud awareness and institutions that can address the root cause of gender-based violence. The impunity that often goes with its called implement policies and enact laws for a stronger national response that can support victims and survivors of violence. We have with us today distinguished stakeholders and amazing speakers who will be discussing with us today life-saving topics as it relates with gender-based violence. Before we go deep into the program, my name is Abiola Abdullahi Lasisi, a proud member of NASFAT Youth Wing and IT manager at John Oates PLC. On this note, permit me to invite to lead us in an opening prayer, Imam Salahuddin Olabunju. Bismillah, sir.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alhamdulillah, 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 rabbil alameen. We thank Almighty Allah who has made it possible for us to be here this morning. We thank him for his blessings in this program this morning. We ask him to be with us from the beginning to the end of the program and make the program a success. May he also make everything we will learn in this program beneficial to every one of us. Allahumma yassir lana wala tu'assir alayna. Ihdina siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladina an'amta alayhim ghayril maghdubi alayhim wala ddallin. Amin. Sallu ala nabiyil kareem.
Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Thank you, Imam, for that concise and rich dua. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to increase you in knowledge. Amen. Moving on. The current leadership of NASFAT is concerned about the incessant cases of rape and other forms of violence ravaging our communities. Hence, it is most ideal to get an opening remark from the president of NASFAT, Mr. Mumini Olani Yusuf. Representing him to deliver his opening remark, he is a man of integrity and honor, a public sector management and training consultant, the NASFAT Vice President 1, Alhaji Honorable Abdurrauf Ayodije. Bismillah, sir. Mr. Vice President 1, you have the floor, sir.
His audio is still muted.
You have the floor, sir.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
cannot start your video because, okay, you disable us. Okay, thank you. Okay, I just want to put on my video and discover you have disabled me from showing my video. Salam alaikum. You have to enable me. You don't want me to see, you don't want my face to be seen?
We want to see your face, sir.
You say you have disabled me, my video. Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. On behalf of my president, Mr. Abimumin Yusuf, as the acting president today, we are really gladdened that this webinar is coming up today, and a very good day to say. We know what this society stands for. As the moderator has said, we are all out for the welfareism of generality of people, whether Muslims or non-Muslims. I welcome all participants for this noble webinar, and I hope everyone will listen very well. However, I need to give a very short brief of what led up to this, because a lot of people will be wondering, our society, what is NASFAT? What does an Islamic society has to do with the issue of gender-based? It's of concern to us. And we know that gender-based violence is violence directed against someone on the basis of their own gender violence against women. And gender-based violence are often used interchangeably, as most gender-based violence is referred by men on women and girls. However, it is important to acknowledge that not all men commit acts of gender-based violence, and that they too can be victims. So I know our speakers will speak into this very well. We know that. And that's why NASFAT has to go ahead and set up NASFAT Child Protection and Gender-Based Violence Response Team for us to show the world that Islam is the pace setters in terms of protecting genders, especially women and the child girl. So, and what are we doing today? We're trying to act, we're trying to innovate, and we're trying to find solutions to this issue. Around the world today, it is estimated that 1 in 3 women and girls will experience gender-based violence. It's an acknowledged fact during their lifetime. For every 3 women, you think of 1 facing the issue of gender violence. And this is rooted in discriminatory gender norms and laws, and rooted in impunity. So gender-based violence occurs in all society as a means of control, subjugations, and exploitation that further reinforce gender inequality. This webinar on creating a zero tolerance to gender violence by the NASFAT Child Protection and Gender-Based Violence Response Team will cover gender-based violence and environmental leakages. We're so interested because a lot of people call us Muslims, we are not concerned about it. We want to tell the whole world that we're concerned about it. The violence of inequality establishes that these patterns of gender-based abuse are observed across environmental contexts, affecting and security and well-being of nations. It's affecting Nigeria, especially in particular, because we know what is happening in this country pertaining to gender violence, communities and individuals, and jeopardizing meetings, sustainable development goals, while linkages between gender violence and environmental issues are complex and multi-layered. This threat to human rights and health, and it's a threat to human rights and health ecosystem, and not unsurmountable. And that's why NASFAT have stand up to say that this thing is surmountable. We just have to act, we have to innovate and find solutions. And I hope this webinar will be able to provide such. A lot of people see Islam as if we don't embrace this. There's so many verses, there's so many sunnahs, and I know our scholar here, our father, will be able to do justice to that are referred to the protections of women and the child girl. And when you talk about women emancipation, I think Islam is in the leading role to that. So in Islam, men and women are different yet equal. Women are treated in all forms as human beings, believers, daughters, sisters, mothers, and wives. So why will everybody refer to Islam as something that is not embracing this gender base? I tell you, my participants today, listen very well to the scholars, and I want our people to know NASFAT is so passionate about this project, and we're ready to push it to any level and go a step further. Apart from having this at our headquarters, we have created it in all our branches across the globe. And people are really saying good things about the society because we are hard for women welfare of human beings. However, I would like you to look at some verses in the Quran, which I know some of us we are already aware and we are very conservative with, for us to show what Islam has done in this path, in this direction. If you look at Quran chapter 30, verse 21, where it is stated, and among God's signs is this: He created for you mate, and among yourself mate, for females and vice versa, and you might find tranquility and peace in them. And He has put love and kindness among you, herein surely a sign for those who reflect. That's in the Quran, and several verses of that. So Islam is the leading factor in terms of embracing and protecting women. And I hope these deliberations will go in that direction to show the whole world that Islam is not behind in any way. We are here to act, we are here to innovate, we are here to find solutions to this problem. Subhana Rabbika, Rabbil Izzati amma yasifun, wa salamun wa rahmatullahi. Happy deliberation.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vice President Juan, for that opening remark, which has given us insight into what NASFAT is doing to better our community. We pray Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to grant the current executive wisdom to direct the affairs of the society. Amen. To guide us directly into the main course of the program will be my co-moderator, a woman of substance, full with swags and ideas, the current Amira of NASFAT Youth Wing at the headquarters. She is an experienced HR professional and currently works as people manager in a multinational organization. Join me in welcoming Aja Rashidat Alo.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Good morning, everyone, and you're welcome to this amazing webinar, which I am sure, inshallah, would be instrumental in making changes, not just to us as individuals, but in empowering us to make changes in the society around us. Because everywhere we turn, somebody somewhere around us is experiencing gender-based violence. And this is to empower us on what we need to do to manage that around us. And to do that today, to speak to us on gender-based violence, preventive strategies, is a woman who has indeed robust experience around this. I have spoken to quite a number of people who have had to engage with her on this, and all they have to say is she is indeed the best person to speak to us on this. Mrs. Lola Vivo Adeniyi is the coordinator domestic and sexual violence response team at the Ministry of Justice, Alausa, here in Lagos. Mrs. Adeniyi, also called the Merchant of Hope, is a legal practitioner and a public administrator with over 10 years in public service. She has served in different capacities within the Lagos State government during this period. She has been instrumental in ensuring a coordinated response to sexual and gender-based violence in Lagos State. She currently serves as the pioneer coordinator of the Lagos State Domestic and Sexual Violence Response Team, a position that she still occupies till date. Mrs. Adeniyi, you're welcome to our midst, ma'am. You do have the floor for the next 20 minutes.
Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum. It's such a privilege for me to be here. I thank Yes, ma'am. I thank the organizers, particularly the Committee on Gender-Based Violence, and I must also acknowledge and appreciate the Director of Public Prosecutions in the Ministry of Justice, Mrs. Adeyemi, who made this possible for me today. I believe the Secretariat will help me in sharing my video. Sharing my presentation, projecting my presentation. Okay. So I'm speaking on sexual and gender-based violence, preventive strategies. And I think this is very apt because we're very quick to talk about the issues, wait for it to happen before we respond. So looking at preventive strategies I think it's the way to go We should not wait until these issues happen before we feel the need to respond. So I'll start off with statistics. We have a recent survey that revealed that 1 in 4 women will be raped, beaten, or abused in their lifetime, whereas 1 in 10 boys will be sexually abused before the age of 18. In this presentation, I hope to quickly identify key concepts, i.e. sexual and gender-based violence, which comprises of domestic violence, sexual abuse, child abuse, and also talk about preventive strategies, push factors for these issues, and then preventive strategies for ensuring that we don't even have to respond to these incidents in the first instance. Please, I do not want to take for granted that we know what gender-based violence is, so I'm just trying to emphasize what it is here. Based on the UN Declaration on the Elimination of Violence Against Women in 1993, gender-based violence was defined as any act of violence that results in or likely to result in physical, sexual, or psychosocial harm or suffering to women, including threats of such act, coercion, or arbitrary deprivations of liberty, whether occurring in public or private life. Indeed, this is a holistic and all-encompassing definition. It shows that it's not just physical, it can also be emotional, it can be verbal, it can be sexual. It can happen in the four corners of a home, and it can happen even in the public life, i.e. sexual harassment that is done in the workplace, religious institutions, or educational institutions. We believe that gender-based violence is a form of violence that is directed and inflicted upon a person solely for reasons of his or her gender. I think this has been corroborated by the Vice President's remarks. We are aware that men and women experience violence. However, evidence suggests that the risk factors, patterns, and consequences of violence against women are different than violence against men. Indeed, many cultures and beliefs, norms, and social institutions legitimize and therefore perpetuate gender-based violence. We have seen over the years an increase in reporting from men. Where I work, we've seen steady increase in reporting from men reporting domestic violence, boys reporting sexual abuse, sexual assault by penetration. We will get into that. But the truth of the matter is that even when we see increase from male reportage, we continue to see the women that are experiencing sexual and gender-based violence. At least 70% of the reporting is from the women. Okay, so what is sexual assault? Sexual assault is any type of sexual contact or behavior that occurs without the explicit consent of the recipient. Please note the determining and the key word there, consent. Consent is not given. A sexual act committed against someone without that person's freely giving consent. And we know that there are instances where the consent can be vitiated. We will get to that. Forms of sexual assault include attempted rape. Unfortunately, some people are not aware that even the very intention to attempt to rape or sexually assault a person is a punishment. I'm sorry, it's an offense and is punishable in Lagos State by up to 14 years imprisonment. It's not until the incident has occurred before it becomes a crime. The fact that you attempt to do it is a form of sexual violence. Well, we have rape, which we're quite conversant with, having unlawful sexual intercourse with a woman or girl without their consent, defilement, having unlawful sexual intercourse with a person below the age of 18, fondling or unwanted sexual touching, sexual assault that does not include penetration, and of course, sexual assault by penetration, which we tend to refer as modern rape. All of these are offenses against the state. They are criminal in nature. For rape, it's life imprisonment. Defilement, life imprisonment. Attempted rape, 14 years. Sexual assault, 3 years. Sexual assault by penetration, life imprisonment. Sexual harassment, 3 years. So you can appreciate the fact that Lagos State government is not joking when it comes to responding to sexual violence, because the sections are very clear as to the weight of punishment that will be attributed once these offenses are committed. I spoke about consent. There are certain instances where we would say consent has been vitiated. The use of physical force, coercion, deception or threat, involvement of a victim that is mentally incapacitated or physically impaired, when the person does not consent to the nature of the act because of deception. I give an example. A father takes his daughter to the religious institution under the guise of deliverance, and the religious leader goes ahead and sexually assaults the child. The father gave consent to deliverance. The father did not give consent to his child being sexually assaulted. Now, domestic violence. Domestic violence is on the increase, especially during COVID. We saw new heights of cruelty meted out against victims and survivors of domestic violence. It was really a very dire time during that period because of the compulsory lockdown necessitated by COVID-19. The house, the home that should be a place of refuge, unfortunately was a place of terror for some certain individuals. Domestic violence is an act of violence or abuse carried out by a person against another person in a cohabiting relationship, i.e. husband and wife, boyfriend and girlfriend, domestic staff and employer, parents and children. And this violence is done with the intention to control and dominate the other party. Please note, landlord and tenant fighting is not domestic violence. Two tenants fighting is not domestic violence. It's assault, simpliciter. But for it to be domestic violence, as provided for in our law, parties must be in a cohabiting relationship, or they were previously in a cohabiting relationship. Now, domestic violence as provided for in the domestic violence law of Lagos State, we have different forms. Physical abuse, where most of us are conversant with that. Pushing, kicking, shoving, kicking, slapping. Sexual abuse, even in a domestic relationship. Verbal abuse, psychological abuse, emotional abuse. I picked you from the gutter. Who were you when I met you? These are the kind of things we hear some perpetrators say to their spouses. And the spouses they appear so defeated. They don't even know what to do because they have been so abused emotionally, and it has taken a toll on their mental state of mind. And that's why sometimes you wonder, if you are experiencing violence, why don't you just leave? Are you sure you're not enjoying something there? Most of them don't even have the capacity, the mental capacity to appreciate that they are in a violence relationship because of the depth of violence that they have been exposed to. Of course, we have economic and financial abuse, stalking and harassment. I had a gentleman that came into the office some years ago. He said that his wife literally stalks him. Anywhere he is, he will call. She will call, tell him, pass the phone to this person, pass the phone to that person, to confirm that truly he is where he says he is, and that it has started to affect him, and that over the years he had developed high blood pressure. Initially, he didn't even see it as a form of violence, but after proper enlightenment and education, he realized that it's not until he is being beaten that it will amount to domestic violence. Now, what are some causes? Causes. Please note, this is not an excuse for gender-based violence, because truly there is no excuse for gender-based violence. But we have some causes. We have some triggers. Some of them are either isolated acts or systematic patterns of violence. But generally, it's not caused by a single factor. It's a combination of several factors that increase the risk of a man committing violence and the risk of a woman experiencing violence. We have individual factors. How is this individual raised? Or rather, how was he or she raised? What is their background? What is their upbringing? What were they exposed to as children? Of course, we have interpersonal and relationship or group processes. Institutional factors, the institutions, the community factors that are in place. Do they propagate perpetration of domestic and sexual violence, either in doctrines, in cultural norms, in societal perceptions, or do they stand against these forms of violence? Of course, public policy and societal influences. What is the stance of the government? What is the stance of the local community? What is the stance of the religious institution? What is the stance of NASFAT? These different factors contribute to the possibility of gender-based violence occurring in the first instance. Now let's look at some push factors for domestic violence. Please note that these things are not, these ideologies or these propositions are not based on my thinking. This is from scientific data, based on research that we commissioned, our own homegrown research, because we were interested in knowing push factors for domestic violence in the state. We found out that at least 60% of abusers admit that they witnessed intimate partner violence whilst growing up. They saw their fathers, they saw men in a fatherly role, a father figure to them, violently abuse their mothers or other females. And so this is what they saw growing up. You know that a child does what he sees, not really less of what you tell him. So that is what they saw growing up, and they thought it was normal. Their mothers remained in those relationships. The children did not receive psychosocial support, and so they thought it was normal that when daddy and mommy or adults are trying to resolve conflicts, they have to deploy violence or force. We also have low self-esteem on the part of these perpetrators. Perhaps it's also a backdrop of what we just talked about, because they are growing up in such violent relationships, violent environment. It affects self-esteem. And you have situations where a person with low self-esteem is trying to bring down another, especially when that other person appears to be thriving or doing better or having doggedness and fulfillment of purpose. You hear things like, I don't want you to work, because if you work, you are going to sleep with all your bosses. If you go to the shop, all your male friends will come in there and you'll partake in adultery. These people make some allegations that have no basis, no evidence, no foundation, because they have low self-esteem. Of course, our patriarchal society, we cannot run away from it. Our patriarchal nature continues to encourage the perpetration of domestic and sexual violence in our society. And so we need to address patriarchy. We need to address patriarchy and address it from a holistic perspective, knowing that what it has done so far is not helping us. Of course, we have religious and cultural norms that unfortunately promote the perpetration of domestic violence. And that is why I was very excited when I was told about this program, because the time has come for the religious institutions to take their place in appropriately responding to incidents of domestic and sexual violence. We have a good number of people that before they come to the office, they say they have approached their religious institution. They have approached their imam. They've approached their pastor. They've gotten involved. They've tried to deploy mediation, but it's not working. In some instances, yes, it has worked. But in other instances, it hasn't worked. And so therefore, they are now before government. Religious and cultural norms, religious institutions have a great role to play in enforcing some of these domestic violence misconceptions. Push factors for sexual violence. Again, we're looking at this from a scientific perspective because we conducted the research on sex convicts. These are people that have been convicted of sexual offenses related matters. We found out that 80.5% of the sex convicts said they had been abused before the age of 6 years old. Unfortunately, they did not receive psychosocial support, and so they began to abuse others. Please note, this is not an excuse for violence, but to address a problem, it is important we go to the root causes, lest we'll be treating the surface. And so these people started to abuse others because they had been exposed to unhealthy relationships at a young age. We also found out that alcohol was a common denominator across most of the perpetrators that we sampled. They said they were under the influence of alcohol. Some said under the influence of hard drugs.
Apologies
Okay.
for that, ma'am.
That's fine. Thank you so much. Pornography exposure was also a push factor. We found out that some of these sex convicts, people serving time, had some sort of addiction for pornography. Culture of impunity. People think they can do this. Get the church, get the mosque involved. They have mediation. They say, let's leave it to God. Forgive and forget. Are you not a Christian? Are you not a Muslim? Vengeance is for the Lord. This person goes away from that community, goes to another community and does it. And he keeps doing it. As I always say, it's not that we have a lot of rapists in Lagos. What we have is a lot of repeat offenders. People doing it and getting away with it. And so the culture of impunity is a push factor because they see that they're doing it, they're getting away with it, and they will continue to do it. We also note that pedophiles, these are people that are sexually attracted to children. They have unhealthy sexual attraction to children. What a normal person will see in a baby, a pedophile will be sexually attracted to a baby in diaper. So it's a push factor, especially when we're looking at pedophiles, people that have sexual attraction towards children. And unfortunately, most of the cases that we receive, cases of sexual violence, are done against children. So we have a lot of child sexual abuse. Okay, so we've identified some push factors. How can we prevent? Because I believe that's why I'm here. We need to promote positive masculinity. The male gender indeed appears to be the gender that is perpetrating sexual and gender-based violence. But we cannot continue to look at the male gender from an antagonistic perspective if we are going to win this war, because ladies and gentlemen, we are at war against sexual and gender-based violence. We need to catch them young, engage boys from the cradle if possible, and imbibe and inculcate in them the tenets of positive masculinity. Who is a boy? What is your role as a boy? Is it okay to cry if you have emotions? Are you a human being? Can you show emotions? Can you be free? Can you express yourself? And can you also appreciate the fact that there is no competition with the female gender? Gender equality. People are irked by when we say gender equality. They say, oh, the feminists have come again. No. Gender equality is giving a level playing ground for every gender to thrive. And so these are the kind of behavioral mindset changes and shifts we need to inculcate in the boys so that when they grow up and they meet their peers, their female peers, there will be no discrimination, there will be no animosity. They will appreciate their roles as boys and then men and ensure that even they speak to their fellow men who may be exhibiting negative tenets of masculinity. We also need to ensure victim safety and offender responsibility. Indeed, everything we do, we must be survival-centered when we're looking at sexual abuse. How can we ensure that the survivor is protected, believed, safe, and is able to access justice? And then more than ever, we must ensure offender responsibility and accountability, because this is the only way we can end the culture of impunity. When cases are reported, we must encourage survivors, their families, the community to focus on getting justice and not going about begging in the name of the alleged abuser. Remember, I spoke about pedophiles that are sexually attracted to children. We have what we call non-offending pedophiles. These are people that are generally attracted to children, but they have not offended. We have to encourage them to reach out and get help before they offend, and then we now have to come in and start to treat. That is a preventive mechanism. We also have to ensure quick dispensation of justice in order to end culture of impunity. It makes a mockery of the system if something happens today and it's going to take 4, 5, 6 years for the person to get justice, especially when we're dealing with children. By the time we're inviting them to come to court, it's possible that the child has even forgotten about what has happened, or the family has relocated. Preventing domestic violence. Yes, We should promote positive masculinity from a young age. I've said that. Empower young girls and boys on self-worth and wholeness. This misconception that it is until you are married that you are deemed a respectable person in the society, I think must be jettisoned, because it is putting a lot of pressure on people to rush into marriages, and those people that are rushing into the marriages are rushing out of marriages. They are not enlightened. They are not aware of what the institution of marriage entails. People think that they have to be married to be respected, to be valued, to even have access to certain positions, job opportunities, for instance. We need to do more in empowering young girls and boys to know their own worth, to know that they are whole, they are complete, they are enough. They don't need somebody else to complete them. It takes two complete people to come into a successful marriage and make that marriage work. So ideally, we need to be doing a lot of engagements with young people in the secondary schools, and particularly in the higher institutions, where we know that's the opportunity, that's the time when they will be contemplating entering into relationships that may lead into marriages. Of course, we need to institutionalize behavioral mindset programs, and we can start with our school curriculum. In the school curriculums, we need to have SRHR projects, sexual and reproductive health rights projects, gender-based violence, child's rights, child abuse. We need to inculcate these things into our children. It can come in form of, there's this course they used to take us on this course. I forget the name of the course, but just entrench these things into our children's upbringing so that it becomes part and parcel of them. Of course, we need to encourage survivors to report cases of violence. Now, when it comes to child abuse, how can I prevent it? I have some key tips. Bond and fellowship with your children. Oh, yes. Research has shown that children that are abused are likely to have been neglected in the first instance. Children that are abused don't really have good, effective communication and relationship with their parents, especially if their parents are not the ones abusing them. Because of course, we have instances where it's the fathers that are sexually abusing their children, or the parents, the mothers that are physically abusing their children. So we need to bond and fellowship with our children. A secret shared with me is still a secret. Yes, I know that we're all busy. This is Lagos, we're all going out. Even if it's just 30 minutes that we can devote every day once we get home to bond and fellowship with our children, I tell you, it will go a long way in ensuring that we have good relationships with our children. And then our children can tell us anything. So that if they are grooming the children for sexual abuse, they can tell us and we can prevent it from happening in the first instance. Then we must empower children on their rights. Children have a role to play in their own protection. We have to teach them with child-appropriate languages. For maybe 2 years or 3 years old, you would think they are not listening, but they are listening. Keep at it. Now we've even gone beyond my vagina or my penis or my anus is a private part. The whole body is a private part. Don't allow anybody touch you in a way that makes you feel uncomfortable. If anybody does that, report. Who should I report to? Report to your mommy, report to your daddy, empower children to be bold and to be vocal. Then we must monitor our children's television, video, and internet usage. This is the new normal. We've gone online, virtual learning. Children are being exposed to all sorts of pornographic materials and all things that are not child-friendly. So we have to put in security measures on our phones, our tablets, laptops, make sure that we have parental control on the TV program. You'll be amazed. Some of these cartoons that children are watching have some sexual pornographic ideologies laced in them. So we have to be vigilant. We have to help ourselves as well. Take time out so that we don't burn out and do transferred aggression on the children. Provide quality care and education to the best of our ability. Participate in parents' association conferences. Please, educators, schools always complain that parents do not turn up when they are having parent-teachers forum. Find out what your school is doing in terms of safeguarding and child protection. Do they have a child protection policy in place so that if an incident of child abuse occurs, they know what to do? Get committed in the life of your children. Data. In 2016, the Domestic and Sexual Violence Response Team attended to 450 cases. 2017, that number went up to 1,044. 2018, it doubled to 2,356. And in 2019, it dropped a bit to 2,284. During the peak period of the lockdown, the DSVRT was attending to on average 15 new cases daily. We however, know that we have not even scratched the surface because these issues continue to remain one of the most underreported vices. But we are comforted with the fact that people are having more confidence in the system. They are speaking up more and they are reporting. As I wrap up, what has the Lagos State government done? In 2014, the Lagos State government deemed it expedient to get all these relevant service providers come under one umbrella and respond collectively with one voice to the issues of rape, domestic violence, and child abuse. And what does it do? It ensures that survivors are able to access end-to-end support, medical assistance, rescue operations where necessary, legal support, law enforcement, psychosocial support, emergency assistance, and empowerment. Empowerment is so critical. You say a person that is experiencing violence should leave the violent relationship. Where do they go to? You keep the person in shelter for 3 months, maximum 6 months. Then what next? So survivors have to be empowered so that you reduce the chances of them going back to that violent relationship. And the counseling, please, I must note, there is a place for religious counseling and there is a place for professional counseling. As religious institutions, we must realize that we're dealing with crimes and we should have interface with government. So yes, religious counseling is good. There's also a place for professional counseling, especially when you have been deploying religious counseling and it's not working. It's important that we take advantage of professional counseling because that may just be what will save that relationship. As I end, please note that we are all mandated reporters. If we see something, we should say something and we should do something. I thank you all for listening.
Jazakumullah khairan. Thank you very much, Mrs. Adeni, for this very impactful session. I have taken a ton of notes and I know questions are already coming in as well. However, in the spirit of managing time, we will take all questions at the end of the session when all speakers have spoken. So for anyone who has any questions for any of the speakers, please drop it in the Q&A box right at the bottom of your screen. And at this point, we will move over to the next speaker, where my brother Abdullah would take over.
Thank you very much, Sister Rashida. Indeed, Islam is a complete way of life. It is a religion of vast dimension, which has inspired great civilizations and today offers many men and women comfort and ethical guidance. Gender-based violence is perpetrated against a person's will and is based on gender norms and unequal power relationships. They are more focused on using faith-sensitive approaches to end sexual and gender-based violence. Hence, with our next speaker, he will be discussing Islamic perspectives on gender-based violence. To deliver this is a man of great repute, a motivational and conference speaker by excellence, who has authored several marriage books with great impact in the life of humanity. A proprietor, matchmaker, community development advocate, Islamic worker, and well-experienced marriage counselor with extreme vast knowledge. He is a friend of the youth and pioneer zonal missioner NASFAT Ondo and Ekiti Zone. To deliver this presentation in the next 20 minutes, join me in welcoming Imam Ibrahim Olalekan Shodende, zonal missioner NASFAT Ondo Zone. Bismillah.
Rahim. We thank Allah has given us another opportunity on our journey against gender violence. Let me start by recognizing Mr. President, every representative of our VP, my co-speakers, and their participants, and the moderators. Let me start on the gratitude note by thanking the first speaker. She has done justice to the assignment given to her, and she has really helped me in my home. But let me start by saying it is often perceived that Islam is in support of gender and domestic violence. Such perception, however, is not ill-conceived. This is because the patriarchal conjugal relationships practiced in most Muslim societies show the subservient roles women play in relation to their husbands. This perception is further aggravated when honor killing, child marriage, and female genital mutilation are still being practiced in the name of Islam in some communities. Dear participants, adding salt to the wound is exploitations of abusive husbands, unfair treatments with regards to women's legal, marital, and financial rights by the Sharia courts in many parts of the Muslim world, and wife battering that has become so rampant, even among supposed Muslim clergy who should know better. These practices given as a sample are actually against the principles and the spirit of the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. For example, when you interrogate Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 228, ayah 228, and the last sermon of the Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, states the rights and responsibilities of both men and women, where both are to honor and protect one another. This discussion will therefore look into Islamic perspective on gender and domestic violence. And this will be seen through the history of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the biography of the Prophet himself. This is going to be taken to be the main reference in this discussion because it is through his biography that Islam was practiced and exemplified. It is my hope that after the actual practice is explained, it will be understood that Islam has zero tolerance to gender and domestic violence. Let me rewind. That gender and domestic violence has no place in Islam, and the real image of Islam and women will be appreciated. The first speaker have discussed what is gender-based violence, the form, and the causes. I'm going to concentrate on the core of my own topic, gender and domestic violence, the Islamic perspective. With a view to declaring war on violence against women, Islam has provided a number of strict measures to ensure peaceful coexistence in the society. For the purpose of this discussion, the Islamic response to violence against women will be limited to three major issues. These are female genital mutilation, rape, and domestic violence. It is of interest to note, dear participants, that the main Islamic schools of jurisprudence differ in their interpretations of the teachings and provision of Islamic law and guidance regarding female genital mutilation. Shafi School of Islamic Thought consider female genital mutilation to be obligatory. Please note. While the Hanbali, Maliki, and Hanafi School of Islamic laws consider female genital mutilation to be just recommended or preferred. 3 against 1. Please note. Although religious views have influenced the practice of female genital mutilation, it is a practice that predates Islam. So to categorize female genital mutilation as an Islamic practice is incorrect in the first instance. The Quran, which is the absolute reference frame of the Muslim, makes no reference to female genital mutilation. There is no agreement on a clear-cut ruling, and there's no analogy in reference to female genital mutilation that can be implemented. And the juristic opinion in fiqh can only be based on the accurate social and medical understanding and interpretation of the practice and the implementation thereof of a legal ruling when it comes to female genital mutilation that is derived from accepted and credible sources, namely the Quran. As for the Sunnah, the precedent or the prophetic practices, there is doubt as to the credibility of some of the hadiths attributed to Prophet in this regard, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The truth is there is no proof of the authenticity of these narratives that can be used as a basis for a legal ruling on such a remorseless and fatal practice. An argument that put paid to the Islamic licitness of female genital mutilation is based on the fact that there is no evidence or indication which shows that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had any of his wives or daughters caught. Had female genital mutilation been among Islamic commands and guidelines that is compulsory, the Prophet would have been the first to implement the law and carry out the practice on his wives and daughters. Thus, it is clear that the authentic Sunnah does not contain evidence that support the compulsoriness of female genital mutilation, and all the hadiths quoted to support the practice are weak and cannot constitute a basis from which a legal ruling can be derived. In fact, female genital mutilation is but a tradition which Islam has left to time and medical progress to eradicate. That is FGM. Now, let's come to rape. Rape is an abominable transgression against the honor of women through the use of force. It is generally known as iktisab in the Islamic law, and this is strictly forbidden. And such, the strictest punishment are imposed to punish and deter others from falling into the same sexual traps. The psychological trauma associated with rape cases is clearly factored into the types of punishment prescribed in the Islamic law. The clear stance of Islam on rape is that of utter prohibition, no excuse, with a consequential deterrent punishment. Because Islam as a complete way of life has taken a number of precautionary measures to shut the door against criminals who might exploit any given situation to perpetuate this heinous crime. Some of these measures include preclusion of marriage for matured people, direct instruction to the female gender to draw their veils over their bosom, to avoid molestation and sexual harassment, and for men to lower their gaze, and prohibition of alcohol and all dangerous drugs that intoxicate a normal human being. With these precautionary measures put in place, if anyone still go ahead, proceed to commit this crime of rape, then in Islam, the perpetrator will have to pay for such grievous crime. The punishment for rape in Islam is similar to that of fornication and adultery. But since force is applied in this case, and it may involve the use of weapons such as knife or other dangerous objects, Muslim jurists have suggested that he be considered as an armed robber, he should be given the punishment of a robber who has violated the honor of an innocent soul. Therefore, the punishment of a rapist may involve crucifixion, according to the Quran requirement in Surah Al-Ma'idah, ayah 33, Quran 5, verse 33, which provides the recompense of those who wage war against Allah and His Messenger is equated to waging war against Allah and His Messenger. We can see how wealthy it is in Islam. And do mischief in the land is only that they shall be killed or crucified, or their hands and their feet be cut off from opposite sides, or be expelled from the land. That is their disgrace in this world. As if that is not enough, Allah have not stopped. And a great torment is theirs in the hereafter. So Muslim jurists also required some form of financial compensation to be paid to the victim for violating a honor. This is the punishment of rape in Islam. Then let's come to domestic violence. Discussing domestic violence, I'm going to start from quoting Quran 4, ayah 19, Surah An-Nisa, the chapter of the women themselves, ayah 19. Allah says, but consort with them in kindness. For if you hate them, it may happen that you hate a thing wherein God has placed much good. This Quranic exhortation stands in stark contrast to beating, being any part of marriage partnership. And this loving standard is further embodied by the prophetic examples. The prophet is ready to have said, the best of you is the best to his family, and I am the best among you to my family. He continued that the most perfect believers are the best in conduct, and best of you are those who are best to their wives. We find this in Jami Tirmidhi. Tragically, yes, I said tragically, despite all the evidence and divine counsel, such as that given, domestic violence still disturbingly and unacceptably prevalent within Muslim families and Muslim societies. We should be clear, however, that while there are inevitably many sociological reasons for its occurrence, such as patriarchy and poverty, the justification for domestic violence on religious ground relies almost exclusively upon one key word within a Quranic verse in Quran 4, ayah 34. Idribuna, being understood or being translated to by a lot of scholars as bit rather than as shun or separate from a spouse. Understanding this verse in the context of other verses, because the best of the transfer is tafsir al-Quran the Quran. Understanding this particular verse of the Quran in context of other verses like Quran 30, ayah 21 that my president quoted, Quran 2, ayah 187, and so on and so forth, on husband and wife relationship and the practices of the Prophet is enough a proof that there is no justification of domestic violence in Islam. The Prophet is required to have said, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Khairukum la yadrib. The best of you will not beat their wives. The Prophet said to his male companions that your wives have been coming to report you to my wives, that you are what? You are violating their rights. And those who are doing that are the worst of you. That is, the best of you will not violate the rights of their wives. Now let us look at the real image of women in Islam, reflecting on the prophetic precedents. Having highlighted the negative backlash against Islam, which is the result of increasing practices of violence against women in different forms, it is pertinent to take a glimpse at the biography of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam to establish the real image of women in Islam. It goes without saying that there are numerous prophetic precedents that shows the true position of women in Islam and why they must be accorded a high status in the society when compared with their male counterparts. The ill-conceived perception that Islam is biased against women is dispelled through a conceptual analysis of how Islam and its law treats women in terms of property rights, matrimonial rights, and human rights, generally with a specific focus on certain prophetic precedents. Let me begin with the clarion call made by Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu.
Dear participants, we are trying to get back our facilitator Imam Shuden. He might be having a bit of technical issues from his end. We hope to have him back very soon. While waiting for him, we can peruse the slide he has sent to us. He's joining back.
Dear participant, this was the first platform where a prophet made declaration of women's rights, despite the fact that throughout his prophetic sojourn, there have been numerous occasions where he had clarified these rights and advised his companions to treat women kindly. He had reiterated this point during his farewell since he was almost sure he would not have any better opportunity to personally inform mankind of the significance of treating women kindly among other values. The real image of women in Islam and the multidimensional safeguards put in place to ensure their protection are based on a number of mechanisms, at least about 4. While the Quran established the fundamental basis of this mechanism through what may be called the Quranic constructs, the historical prophetic precedent, which have similar binding effect, complement the Quranic construct. Furthermore, there is a Maqasid paradigm, which specifically establishes the higher objectives of the Sharia and stipulates what the law seeks to protect and preserve. In doing it, come into play as it is to bring benefit to mankind and ward off evil, all sort of harms. A mixture of these targets achieve one singular objective, dear participant, protection of women. The female gender is jealously protected, whether as a daughter, sister, or wives. Women are honored and protected in Islam. Look at what the Prophet said about the status of women in Islam. Women are your twin half. Women are considered the twin half of men. As mother, Abu Hurairah narrated The Imam came to the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and said, "O Messenger of Allah, who among the people is most deserving of my good company?" The Prophet replied, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Your mother." He asked, "Then who?" The Prophet replied, "Your mother." He asked again, "Then who?" The Prophet said, "Your mother." He asked once more, "Then who?" The Prophet now said, "Your father." This prophetic precedent explains the prime position Islam places women with particular references to mother. It is the same prophet that made us to understand that the paradise of every child lies at the feet of his or her mother. It is the same Islam that comes to abolish female infanticide. Islam equally frowns at the preference of males over females, particularly when the use of childbirth is given. Just as Islam honors mother, daughters are also revered with special references to the parents' role in proper female child upbringing. In a prophetic statement, Abu Sa'id al-Khudri narrated that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam once said, "Whoever has 3 daughters or 3 sisters or 2 daughters or 2 sisters and take good care of them and fears Allah with their regard to them will enter paradise." That is, taking care of your daughter is a ticket to paradise. Having explained the image of women as daughters and mothers, it is considered the status of women as wives. She reported that the Prophet, in essence, women are to be treated nicely, and law confers on them rights similar to those men in most situations. They have the rights of inheritance, which was either to denied women in other civilizations until about 2 centuries ago. And they can choose their husbands and acquire property of their own. These distinct rights granted to women during a period where most parts of the world were still wallowing in the dark with barbaric civilization are established permanently in Islamic law. And I want to put it forth that cannot be changed by the change in time and space. Furthermore, contrary to the general beliefs, though not contrary to Islam, that give women edge in terms of control subject to the overreaching provision of the law. Let me give a prophetic precedent that will explain this clearly. Umar ibn Khattab, the second caliph of Islam, once said to the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "We Quraysh used to control our women. But when we came to the Medina, we found that there were people who were controlled by their women. So our women started to adopt their ways of their women." I want you to listen to this hadith. "I got angry with my wife, and she said, 'Why do you object to me arguing with you? Am I right? By Allah, the wives of the Prophet argue with him.'" It's gleaned from this prophetic tradition that men are prevented from being harsh to their women. According to Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, the Prophet adopted the way of the Ansar and forsook the way of his people. The implication of this interpretation of the precedent is that the Prophet chose the easier path by being nice to women and allowing them to have their ways in most issues, insofar they remain within the ambits of the law. Let me wrap up my discussion by saying Islam goes beyond mere rituals. It is a complete way of life which proactively pursues benefits and blocks all means leading to evil or harm. And it is therefore very necessary to conclude that Islam relates more to well-being of mankind, and it forbids violence against women in its totality. Thank you for your attention.
You're muted, Bro Abdullah.
Thank you, Sister Rashida. Thank you so much, Imam, for your rich and well-delivered presentation. To further collaborate your submission, Islam is 100% against sexual and gender-based violence. Hence, we must all join hands in our different locality to stamp it out. Moving on, NASFAT has indeed made strides and efforts on ending gender-based violence, starting with the UNICEF-sponsored campaign to end violence against children in 2017. Several programs, collaborations, and projects have been done in all our locations to create awareness and be a driver in the fight to end these menace. A response team was created by the current executive, tagged NASFAT Child Protection and Gender-Based Violence Response Team. You may want to ask, what has the team done so far? I'll be handing over to my co-moderator, who will be taking the next speaker on strides and efforts on gender-based violence, NASFAT as a case study.
Jazakumullah khairan, Bar Abdullah. Like we all know, NASFAT has really made strides in the area of tackling gender-based violence. And the person who has championed this and taken this as a cause is none other than Alhaja Ganiya Tomomi Babalola, the coordinator of the NASFAT Child Protection and Gender-Based Violence Response Team. Alhaja Ganiya Tomomi Babalola is a two-term NASFAT National Children Affairs Secretary, popularly called YEWI. She's the project lead focal point for the UNICEF NASFAT partnership, an ex-official member of NASFAT and the head of NASFAT Guidance and Counseling Committee. She's also she's married, a mother. She holds a Bachelor of Arts and MA honors in Yoruba from the University of Lagos, enjoys being with children, and has been a founding member of NASFAT. She has been in the children's section since inception, so you will understand her passion for children. She's a mentor, a marriage counselor, and a child advocate. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhaja Babalola, you have the floor, ma.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much, my sister. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. All praises and adorations to Almighty Allah, the Lord and the sustainer of the universe. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon our noble Prophet Muhammad, his household, his companions, and the entire Ummah until the day of Yawm al-Qiyamah. NASFAT presidents ably represented by VP1, Alhaji Rauf, Abdul Rauf Ayodeji, Board of Trustee members in the House, our Elders Council members in the House, my colleagues in the NEC, our able father, the CM, the Chief Missioner of NASFAT, Engineer Imam Maruddin Onike Aziz, the committee members of NASFAT's response team, our amiable speakers for today's program, distinguished brothers and sisters in Islam, I say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The topic before me this morning has been introduced by the moderator. It strides and efforts of gender-based violence, NASFAT as a case study. We're going to be looking at what NASFAT has been doing so far in terms of gender-based violence. Unfortunately, time is a constraint, but I'll try as much as possible to rush through what I have there. My presentation might not really correlate with what is being presented. Please bear with me. Gender-based violence occurs in all parts of the world, but the risk is higher where violence is normalized, most especially in many cultures, where some of the acts constituting violence towards girls and young women are accepted as social norms. What do I mean by that? Talking about female genital mutilation, of course, people would believe is the tradition. Child marriage, they believe is in some culture, they believe whenever a girl sees her first menstrual period, she should be married off. Then the way some widows are also being treated, that they believe is a part of their tradition, they are part of the social norms that constitute gender-based violence. Some people are also of the opinion that gender-based violence can be used interchangeably with women violence, neglecting the fact that some men also experience domestic violence, has been put forward by our lecturer. The survey had it that 1 in 3 women and girls globally will be victims of gender-based violence in their lifetime. Although the figure is staggering, but it is the reality. By way of definition, the definition has been given by Mrs. Lola Bivo, but all the same, gender-based violence is the type of violence being perpetrated on an individual or a group of people based on their gender or biological sex. And it can be in various forms. It can be child marriage, female genital mutilation, honor killings, trafficking for sex, intimate partner violence, physical punishment, sexual, emotional, or even psychological violence. All these, they are irrespective of age, color, or race of the victim. Now, faith-based organization like NASFAT, you agree with me that we are also among the key players in the fight against gender-based violence, as our members are influenced through religious teachings. What I'm saying in essence is that whenever you have an Islamic organization and there are some people having issues regarding their marriage and all that, they'll bring it forth to the religious leaders or the elders in the society. And alhamdulillah, NASFAT is blessed with that. We have our missioners, we have elders council, we have women forum that respond to issues like this. So that is why I said, since inception, any suspected or even reported cases that are gender-based violence related are well attended to by the relevant committee like women management, elders council members, as well as the mission board. As gender-based violence is violation of human rights, the first collaboration of NASFAT with an international organization started in 2016 with former president of the United States of America, Jimmy Carter Center Foundation. They approached NASFAT for collaboration. The Carter Center program is on mobilizing religious leaders on the rights of women and girls. And the project lead for this and the focal point is Alhaja Sadiat Unike Aziz, the head of NASFAT Women Dawa. What has this fetched NASFAT? So far, 51 women and imams of NASFAT from various branches and zones have been trained on human rights. Among the rights is the right to be free from all forms of violence and discrimination. This includes aligning human rights with religion. So people are of the opinion that human rights is actually Western, but it has been demonstrated to us during the presentation of Imam Student Day that Islam respects the human rights of women, children, and everybody, not even humans, but also animals. They also have their rights, as humans also have their rights. The training from a Carter Center have engendered various projects to enhance community well-being for women and girls. Some of the programs that can campaign against child labor in Kwara State, widows empowerment in Lagos, Abuja, Asaba, and Port Harcourt, campaign against early child marriage in 3 villages, Kano, empowerment of about to be released female inmates of Kirikiri prison. We're all aware that whenever some prisons are being released, if they don't have something to, if they are not well empowered, there is chance that they might even go back to the crime for which they were serving jail time for. Recently, the Carter Foundation did campaign against domestic violence between July and September 2020, and they used various platforms for this campaign, the use of radio, e-posters, and Twitter for the campaign all over the country. This was done in collaboration with Form 1, the Federation of Muslim Women Association of Nigeria, and WOWICAN, the women angle of Christian Association of Nigeria. Now, coming back to NASFAT UNICEF collaboration. In 2017, UNICEF approached NASFAT for collaboration on ending violence against children campaign. The understanding is that every Nigerian is religious. On Sundays, they either go to church or to the mosque for Asalatu. And people always listen to whatever their religious leaders tell them when they stand on the pulpit or on the minbar. So that is one of the reasons why UNICEF, enter into partnership agreements with UNICEF. Then they gave us 2 focus states to operate in, Lagos State and Cross River State. We were given two local governments in Lagos State and 3 local governments in Cross River State. The two local governments in Lagos State are Ikeja and Koshope local government, Calabar Municipality, Calabar South, and Akankwa local government were the local government in Cross River State. The scope of the sensitization, however, an awareness campaign on ending violence against children cover advocacies to dignitaries and stakeholders in the 2 focus states, such as paramount rulers, community leaders, relevant government and non-governmental agencies. A lot of activities were carried out then. The first thing we did was the sensitization of the stakeholders of NASFAT at the headquarters and in the zones, because the understanding is that if the stakeholders don't have the clear understanding of what we really intend to do, it might be very, very difficult to disseminate the information. That's the reason why the stakeholder sensitization was coming first. Like I said, it was only 2 focus states that NASFAT was giving, but NASFAT extended the sensitization to other states, with NASFAT bearing the cost, because we have the understanding that we cannot only limit such a laudable program to Lagos State and the Cross River State. The activities then were women sensitization, because we know that these categories of people really matter most in the community. When we are talking about the people that are being affected by this violence, it is either women, children, or even our youth. So women were captured in the sensitization, our youth, the children in school, and the children that attend our Salatu. The children in Arabic schools, we also visited them during a program that we called Week of Enlightenment. During the Week of Enlightenment program, all that we do is the sensitization, creating awareness about this ending violence against children. Our children were taken through different types of training, how they can protect themselves, how they can identify a potential perpetrators. And we have various information on the placard that the children were carrying there. Like I said the other time, during the Week of Enlightenment, we had press conference in Lagos and in Cross River State. We had rally, road show, so that people in the vicinity, people within the vicinity can be aware of what NASFAT was doing. At the end of the collaboration, UNICEF encouraged NASFAT to develop 2 important documents: Code of Conduct for NASFAT and Guidelines to Positive Parenting. We realize that most parents even perpetrate this evil act on their children without realizing that they are actually doing what is wrong. They don't know when discipline stops and when violence begins. We took them through various parenting styles so that each and every one of them can actually identify themselves with the parenting styles that they were being taught. We also took a step further, because we believe once the program is put on hold, there must be a way where people can reach out for the help that they require. We developed a sticker, not only a flower, because when you give them flyers, people can just drop it anywhere. We produce various helplines that the people can use whenever they are in need or they want to report cases of violence on behalf of anybody. We have from DSBRT, Madam's Office, Child Protection Unit from the Ministry of Youth and Social Development, Chichiyara Foundation, Child Protection Network, Lagos State, the Police Gender Unit, Lagos State. Now, apart from all this, what are the other sustainable efforts of NASFAT in combating all forms of gender-based violence, even after the partnership agreement was on hold? These are the programs that NASFAT embarked upon. NASFAT constituted NVAC committee across the zones to continue driving the message of NVAC and all forms of gender-based violence at grassroots level. Each zones of NASFAT was asked to set up their own NVAC team so that they can respond to cases of gender-based violence within their vicinity. Because of the laudable program, we started receiving invitations from different communities, inviting us to come for sensitization program. We had some in Ikorodu, Ikotun, and all that. Then we also created active WhatsApp platform that also serve as reporting channels and information dissemination platform to keep people updated about recent cases and progress about gender-based violence cases. The concept of mandated reporter being well understood by our people was evident in the way they report not only confirmed cases, but also their suspicions. The platform is an opportunity for people to report cases. Some cases that cannot be posted on the platform, they do private chat so that we take it up from there. In the early part of this year, during the COVID-19 pandemic lockdown, certain cases of rape and domestic violence were on the increase, you agree with me. And in line with the mission statement of the society that is concerned about welfare of mankind, our visionary president, may Allah be pleased with him, Alhaji Ni Yusuf, constituted a committee to decide on how NASFAT can lend a voice to the various cases of sexual and gender-based violence ravaging our society. And it was that committee then that is now known as NASFAT Child Protection and Gender-Based Violence Response Team. You recall that various organizations, were posting their response, their concern about the incessant cases of rape and gender-based violence in the society then. Now, the president now said we should constitute a committee that will decide on what the society can actually do so that we also lend our voice to the incessant cases of rape in the society. And during the time, we produced various messages on e-poster that we share on our social media platform and all that. Here we are, NASFAT Child Protection and Gender-Based Violence Response Team. We are in partnership with government and non-governmental agencies that are key players in the fight against gender-based violence so that we can effectively and collectively respond to reported cases of gender-based violence in our communities. Women at Risk Foundation trained 25 imams of NASFAT and 2 months ago as part of their Gatekeepers project. One of the imams was initially trained, and later he was asked to gather 25 imams from NASFAT. Myself and Alaja Onike also joined in the training. Now, for our people to have access to the help and services that they require, we now have a helpline that is 0704 811 5092. The imam that was first trained by Warif is Imam Olaguju, and is the one that coordinated the 25 other imams of NASFAT that were later trained by Warif International. As part of UNICEF requirement for continued partnership with NASFAT, the society is expected to train the stakeholders and other members on prevention from sexual exploitation and abuse, as well as integrating PSEA into our policies and operations. Alhaja Fauziat Monino Lalawa, the National Children Affairs Secretary for the Society, is the focal point for this project, the PSEA project. And she also did her best to ensure that our members are well trained in the area of prevention from sexual exploitation and abuse. We were even compelled to take some online training that we got certified for. NASFAT's Child Protection and Gender-Based Violence Response Team, being the organizer of this webinar, is a hub for the society's carefully selected members from various zones of NASFAT and headquarters alike that are experienced in the concept of gender-based violence and other related fields. Realizing that multi-sectoral approach is key in addressing the issues of gender-based violence, we are in collaboration, like I said the other time, with other key players in this field. Warif, that trained Imam 2 months ago. Chichera Foundation also organized a training on child protection also 2 months ago. Mirabel Center, we've been there. Muslim Lawyers Association of Nigeria, Molan, Police Gender Unit, Advocate for Children and Vulnerable Persons Network, to mention just a few. This is one of the advocates, when he was training our members on safeguarding our child protection policy in Lagos State. We work together in cases of gender-based violence, irrespective of the location, because we have advocates across the state. We also seldomly invite them for training. 2 weeks ago, Chichera Foundation put a call through to us that there is a particular girl below the age of 18. She tried to commit suicide. When she was eventually rescued, why would you do a thing like that? She said her father had already collected dowry so that she'll be given out in marriage, and she's interested in learning tailoring and all that. We have to reach out to our members in Kogi State so that they can intervene. Suffices to say that survivors of gender-based violence also require a full range of services, from medical care to counseling to legal support, before they can be fully integrated into the community. We can't contest this. All these efforts are in line with the focus of the current National Executive Council of NASFAT, which is health. H for health, E for education, H for livelihood, and D for DAWA. NASFAT is not losing sight of the critical role of counseling in combating gender-based violence. Hence, the society's decision to fully engage most of our spiritual leaders in counseling training, which will empower them to help Muslims that approach them for gender-based violence-related cases, in addition to the services being rendered by NASFAT Guidance and Counseling Committee. We are fully committed to well-being of our people in terms of health, education in various forms, means of livelihood, and calling people to the right path, which is Dawa. NASFAT is not only doing this as a mandate, but also as acts of worship. Appreciating Lagos State Ministry of Women and Poverty Alleviation through the concerted efforts of NASFAT Women Affairs Secretary from the first to the current National Women Affairs Secretary. We appreciate Alaja Rashida Babalola, Alaja Oladoja, Alaja Nafisa Karogudade, Alhaja Mumini, and our current Mama, Alhaja Kukolati, for their efforts in ensuring that women of Alijana and their families are well protected. In conclusion, therefore, apart from our effort in combating gender-based violence so far, we are still reiterating our commitment to taking necessary and appropriate action to tackle this menace through enlightenment and awareness creation on protection, safe and accessible reporting channels, referral to appropriate service provider, justice to survivors by ensuring prosecution of perpetrators of gender-based violence, commitment to Sustainable Development Goal 5, which is achieve gender equality and empowerment of women and girls. Continuous partnership with other key actors to scale up advocacy on putting an end to gender-based violence. Advocacy on the need to have transit homes or shelters, possibly in every local government, for gender-based violence survivors. We realize that some people still remain in the abusive a relationship because they don't have anywhere to go after leaving the relationship. Gender-based violence in its various forms is the violation of human rights. Therefore, NASFAT frowns at it and shall continue to demonstrate this in thought and action, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward each and every one of us bountifully as we join hands in the fight against all forms of violence in our communities. Action against gender-based violence must be prioritized. Therefore, when you see something, say something and do something. Thank you very much for listening. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And takeaway for me is when you see something, say something and do something. And this totally ties in with the hadith of Rasulullah that says that when we see something that is bad, we should correct it and we should change it. If we are not in a position to change it, we should speak up against it. If you cannot speak up against it, then make sure that in your mind you condemn such acts. And this just, wraps this up beautifully for us. Thank you very much, Alhaja Babalola, for all that you do in driving the eradication of gender-based violence, not just in NASFAT, but in our society. I'm going to hand over to my brother to take us through the Q&A session. If you have any questions for the attendees, kindly please put your questions in the Q&A box or send it to any of the moderators. Masalam.
Thank you very much, Sister Rashida, and thank you so much, Alhaja Babalola, once again for your selfless service in the coordination of NASFAT's Child Protection and Gender-Based Violence Response Team. The team is doing wonderfully well, and we encourage you to do more. Moving on to the Q&A segment, I have the next 8 to 10 minutes to take our questions and direct them to our 3 speakers. Questions have already been coming in through the Q&A session, so I will be directing them to our speakers. Starting with Imam Shodeinde, I have 2 questions for you here. They are kind of a bit interrelated. The first one is, most of our spiritual leaders are imams, they are men, and ladies who are abused, violated, find it a bit difficult to open up to them based on the gender differences. How do we overcome this? Then the second question for Imam Shodeinde will be, what is the League of Imam doing about the issue of culture of silence in terms of cover up, particularly when it involves Imam? I want Imam Shodeinde to take these 2 questions.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. May Allah reward all the panelists as well as the questionnaire. Let me start by the first question. You see, the first thing we need to do is awareness. When enlightenment is enough, you will not mind telling an imam this is a particular problem. But the second problem is how many imam has the knowledge of how to handle such situations. So it is a two-way thing. But I think the first thing is there should be awareness on the part of the victims, as well awareness on the part of the imam. With general awareness, the problem will be a thing of the past. Then the issue of League of Imam and Alpha, they have attended trainings about this kind of a thing too. So gradually it will continue to change. Because ordinarily they might want to be sentimental that the person involved is an imam. But now it is compulsory. They have understood the mandatory reporting that if they see something, they must say something. And not just say something like Elijah said, there must be, an action must be taken. So inshallah, gradually, most of this thing is going to be a thing of the past. I think that is my take on the 2 questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Imam. Moving on to questions for our speaker, Mrs. Titilola Baiwadeni. I noticed she has been trying to answer a few of the questions in the Q&A section, but for the benefit of our members who might not go to that section, I still want her to come up and vocally respond to those questions. I have 3 questions for her, which goes thus. One of our participants needs a clarity that checking your wife or husband phone, is it a form of violence? That's the first question. Then the second will be, do you have records for sexual? By this meaning, I mean your agency. their record for sexual offenders? And the third question is, how do you get, if we need to, how do we get to you if we need to report cases? How can the NASFAT response team collaborate with your agency? Can you take this later?
Thank you very much. So the first question about checking on your wife or husband regularly. No, I don't. I think that's a sign of affection. However, when the intention behind that checking up is laced by lack of trust and suspicion, there is a problem. Because then it's not just checking up on the spouse. You're suspecting that perhaps this spouse is having extramarital affairs, and some people go as far as stalking them, keeping tracks on their phones, cloning their phones, putting tracker in the car, and all of that. So that one has gone beyond checking up on your spouse. So I think the intention behind everything we do is critical and is important. Sex offenders register, yes, in Lagos State we have the sex offenders register in Lagos State. It's managed by the Ministry of Justice in partnership with the Lagos State Police Command and the judiciary. As regards partnership with NASFAT, yes, it can actually, I'm aware that NASFAT had written, but they wanted to pay a courtesy visit to my office, but due to some unforeseen challenges, I think that was during COVID-19, I don't recall, but it couldn't take place. So it's a very straightforward process to enter into partnership with DSVRT. A letter can just be written to the Honorable Attorney General, who serves as the chairman of DSVRT, introducing the organization and indicating their willingness and intention to partner with the team. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Titola. The last question goes to Alaja Ganiat Babalola. We've been doing these wonderful programs, the child protection, gender-based violence, and in NASFAT is diverse. We have several zones and branches spread around the world, Egypt, Canada, and so on. How do we make sure these programs get to them? I know one of those in such of those programs is organizing this virtual webinar where they can attend. But how do we make sure other programs that we are doing get across to all those branches and zones in those other areas?
Thank you very much for that question. It is very straightforward. It's a matter of a member from such zone or branch, joining the response team platform, so that they will be monitoring our activity. They will understudy what we do there, and later they also set up their own. I can assure you that FCT now have their own response team platform, which I'm a member. So it is very, very easy. So it's a matter of just contacting me on WhatsApp, then you'll be added to the platform. And the more the merrier. So it's just begin from there. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you very much, Alaja Olala. Mrs. Titola, we still need you here. My co-moderator has a question for you, so I'll just be handing over to her so that she can ask that question directly.
Thank you very much, Ma, for the insights. You talked about a lot about the various forms of violence that we're exposed to, and you talked about prevention. And you had also mentioned about support, but I just wanted to delve a bit deeper into the support. So what psychosocial support do we have available for victims of sexual abuse in Lagos State, especially children?
Okay, so in Lagos, we have sexual assault referral centers. We currently have 2 sexual assault referral centers and 1 child-centered institution, which is the Chechayara Foundation, where you can receive children that have been sexually abused can receive psychosocial support, psychosocial therapy to assist them on their road to healing. Then at DSVRT, we have our in-house clinical psychologists, where we find out that, maybe 2-3 sessions at these different centers may not suffice. So we activate our own clinical psychologists to provide this support to child sexual abuse survivors. Also note that psychosocial support is not sorry, I'm outside. Psychosocial support is not just, counseling. You also have an element of empowerment. And this is very important, especially where survivors have been so affected by the abuse that they need to relocate from their environment. Perhaps it has become, the incident has become the talk of town. So the child now maybe needs to change schools. The parents need to relocate to another community because everybody has become aware of the unfortunate incident. And so empowerment and support also kicks in there. So we actually have a trust fund in the DSVLT to address such issues, i.e. relocation, education, if the child needs to be moved from a particular school, if the child needs to change schools, that can also be done. So that our support is truly holistic and it's survivor-centered.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We are aware that your ministry do a lot of trainings, and we want these trainings to be extended to our response team members also. Mrs. Titulaba.
We partner with NASFAT. It's just that in the past couple of years, we've had issues with funding, but hopefully 2021 will be different. And so when we will resume our trainings, definitely NASFAT is a key stakeholder in this fight. We'll definitely inform NASFAT.
Thank you very much, Ma. Thank you very much, Ma. Dear stakeholders, speakers, and participants, child protection and ending gender-based violence is our collective responsibility. Mrs. Titilola has equipped us with preventive strategies. Imam Shode India has informed us that Islam is strongly against child violence, while Alhaja Babala has used NASFAT as a case study in the effort to end gender-based violence. On this note, it is a huge honor and privilege to invite a man of timber and caliber, a visionary leader par excellence, our own spiritual leader, the chief missioner of NASFAT, Imam Moruf Onike Aziz, to give his remarks. After his remarks, Imam will be assisting us with the closing dua. Bismillah, Imam, sir.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعين به ونستغفره ونتوكل عليه من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا تجد له وليا مرشدا وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا دائما أبدا إلى يوم الدين حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير. We thank the Almighty Allah, we rely on the Almighty Allah, we seek the forgiveness of the Almighty Allah, and we seek the assistance of the Almighty Allah. Whoever Allah has guided aright, nobody can lead him astray. Whoever has been led astray by Allah, nobody can guide him aright. We seek Allah's blessing on our noble Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah wants to bless him, bless his companions, bless all the members of his household, and bless the entire Muslim Ummah. I greet you in the best way of greetings by saying the peace and blessings of Allah be upon you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much.
First and foremost, I have to thank Allah profusely for making today's program possible. I thank the organizer, the Almighty Allah, Azza wa Jalla, who can reward Alhaja Ganiyat Babalola and our team members. Only Allah can reward you. We are confident and we believe firmly that Allah will never leave any of his promise unfulfilled. He said, "Inna Allah la yudiu ajra al-muhsinin." He will never render useless the work of any of good doers. I know and I believe sincerely that by the time you meet Allah and you see the reward that you have amassed, you'll be surprised. May the Almighty Allah not deny you the reward. May Allah grant you the reward. May Allah be with you. I'm going to make your task easy. The most important thing is for Allah to accept all that you are doing for more. May Allah accept. May Allah find all these activities in your scale of good deeds on the day of Qiyamah. Wala ola wala quwwata illa billahi al-aliyyil azim. Nasrullah as a society set up to pursue four agenda, to focus on four agendas in recent times. I call the agenda health agenda, health, education, livelihood, and Dahwa. All these 4-point agenda, they fall in line with our mission statement, which is to develop an enlightened Muslim society, nurtured by the understanding of Islam, for the development and welfare of mankind. What you are doing today, prevention from sexual exploitation and abuse, falls under our health policy, it falls under our education policy, and it falls under our Dawah policy. How does it fall under our Dawah policy? Quran chapter 3, verse 1 says, وَلِتَكُنْ مِنْكُمْ أُمَّةٌ يَدْعُونَ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ وَيَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنكَرِ وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. Let arise a party among you. Let a group of you stand up, enjoying what is good, asking people to do what is good, and forbidding what is evil. These are the people who will succeed here and the hereafter. How does it fall under the agenda of Nasrullah Party? We know the implication of the implication of getting abused, having kind of knowledge of somebody without his or her consent, the kind of health implication that will arise from it. And that's why the party keeps on saying that the health of every member is paramount. How does it come under education aspect of Nasrullah Party? Since morning, since 10 o'clock, we have been educating each other on the evils of sexual abuse, on the evil of sexual exploitation. And Nasrullah Party will continue to say that gender violence, or in whatever form, can never be part of Islam. This is a religion that says categorically in Quran chapter 30, verse 21 that Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Amini ayati, ani khalaqalakum min anfusikum azwaja, litaskunu ilayha, wa ja'ala bainakum mawaddatan wa rahma. Inna fi dhalika laayatin liqaumin yatafakkarun. Quran chapter 30, verse 21 summarizes, exemplifies, and elucidates the importance of marriage in Islam. There are 3 keywords there. Allah says, part of his sign is that he has created for you your mate among yourself. Human beings will marry human beings, animal will marry human beings, animals. He said, among yourself, you have created mate for you. In order for you to find tranquility in each other, in order for you to find calmness in each other. Allah does not stop there. He puts between you, he puts in your heart love and mercy. This is part of the ayah, part of the sign for those who can reflect. There are 3 keywords there: tranquility, love, and mercy. TLM. Any religion that emphasizes this, any religion that promotes it, will never support any act of violence in whatever form. And Nasrullah Party will never rest on its past to campaign against sexual violence in whatever form, from whichever sex, in whichever sex. We don't matter Allah to strengthen the society. Nasrullah Party Nation Board is ready to partner, and we continue to partner with this committee in order to educate people on the evils of sexual violence, on what our Sharia says, on what Islam says about sexual violence. And we will continue to work with you. May Allah spare our lives, and may Allah make all the tasks easy for all of us. I say, on behalf of the entire mission of the Nasrullah Party, to all the committee members of the prevention of sexual violence and sexual exploitation and violence, I say, Jazakumullahu khairan kathira. And to all those who are found time to participate in today's program, I say, may Allah count it among your goodies on the day of Qiyamah. Allah matamartana bidu'aik, wa watana bi ijabatik, wa qad'unaka kama amartana, wa ajbina kama watana, ya da jalali wal ikrami, innaka la tukhlifu al-mi'ad, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-aliyyil azim, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-aliyyil azim, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-aliyyil azim. Sallu ala nabiyyil karim sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammadin wa sallim.
Amin. Thank you so much, EJ Imam, for that wonderful remarks. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to increase your knowledge so that you can put in NASFAT to heights. Amin. On behalf of the organizers of this webinar, on behalf of my co-moderator, Alhaja Rashida Tididi Balogun, we would like to appreciate all stakeholders, starting from the Board of Trustees, the National Council of Elders, the National Executive Council, the National Mission Board, zonal and branch executives, women of Aljana, our youth, and most importantly, our participants. Thank you very much. I remain Abiola Abdullahi Lasisi, and I would like to end with this quote. We are proud of Allah as our Lord, Islam as our religion, and Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We would also like to say a very big thank you and jazakumullahu khairan to the facilitators of today's session. Mrs. Titilola Vaivo Adeni, thank you very much for your time, Ma, and for your expertise. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will continue to exalt you and continue to make easy your path, mashallah. Imam Ibrahim Shadaindi, thank you very much, sir, for all that you do in the area of counseling and youth development. May Allah continue to elevate you as well. Alaja Ganiya Tomomi Babalola, Yewe. Thank you, Ma, for all that you do for the deen. Thank you for all that you do for the society. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would definitely repay you in bountiful folds, and all your own fruits would also find favor wherever they go. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. We will draw the curtain on today's session at this point and hope that this is beneficial to every one of us and stands us in good stead on the day of Qiyamah. Ameen.